Hey, listen, just got off the phone with Mr. Gabriel Curry. He wants to meet. Looks like we're going to be able to get this movie started, man. All right, give me a call back. Bye.
Breech and with the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck and dead. They isolated me from my mom immediately. The result was that I was stricken with cerebral palsy in the right side of my body. Light enough to kind of get away with, but heavy enough to damage my spirit in some ways to where, I was always kind of held up against certain physical limitations. When I found creativity, or when it found me, rather, I kind of used it to fuel my fire, I guess. I kind of used it to create a certain purpose. So it's never really been something that has been unnatural to me. It's always been natural to me to have to fight my way through stuff. And when I found guitar building, I found a place where I could be by myself without any limitations and put all that pain and loneliness into that,
While researching guitar makers, Jonathan ran across an article about Gabriel Curry and his company Echo Park Instruments, located in Echo Park, California. I think what caught Jonathan's interest was not only did Gabriel handcraft guitars for some famous players, but had moved his company from East LA to Michigan around 2016. After sending an email, Gabriel responded with an invitation to his workshop. Every time we stopped at Gabriel's workshop, he was there designing, cutting bodies, and sanding necks. We watched a lot of guitars being made. Then they were sent out, never to return. It was kind of sad in a way. Gabriel makes some beautiful guitars, but looks aren't everything. The tone, resonance, and the ability for him to make a guitar for a client that truly becomes an extension of the player is remarkable. He prides himself as a craftsman, but really dives into the player's nuances and style before he even begins the build. I know Gabriel has natural talent, gifts so to speak, but I wonder where he was schooled. Who taught him how to build guitars?
1989, I was working for, apprenticing for a classical guitar builder in Los Angeles, and I came into the shop one day and he announced his retirement to me, and I had hopes that I would continue with him and master the craft of acoustic classical guitars. And he said, you know, I think you'd be better off making electric guitars because you're not going to make any money making acoustic guitars. And I was, you know, pretty dumbfounded. And he said, I got a number of a guy that I want you to go see, and I've already made the phone call, and they're expecting you. And so he gave me the card with the number, and I called the number and set up the appointment for 8 o'clock the next morning down in Fullerton. And up until that point, I mean, I had known about Fenders because I learned on a Music Master when I was 10. That was my first guitar, was a Fender Music Master, 1957, Fender Music Master. And so I was, you know, but I didn't know who G&L Guitars was. And so I took the bus at 6 o'clock in the morning, and on the way down there I had a trade magazine, a Guitar Player magazine, and in the magazine was an article about the new company by Leo Fender and what they were doing, and it was just random. He didn't give me the magazine. I just, you know, I had a subscription, so I grabbed it on the way out the door just to read it. And I didn't even know that article was in the publication. And so I read it on the way down there, and it clicked that that's where I was going that morning. And so by the time I got there, I kind of had a crash course in what G&L Guitars was. And I walked in, and I had the guitar that I had made a couple of years prior in a shop class, and I brought that with me just because I thought I was like, you know, hip swinging guy. And plus I'd had like a year of actual training under my belt, and you know, years of tinkering from a young age. And so I brought the guitar, and I met Leo first, and he had actually by that time suffered a stroke, so he wasn't in great health, and his communication skills weren't ever that great, but especially at this time because he had suffered the stroke, he couldn't really talk, but he could mumble, and he could shake hands, and he had an iron grip. So we shook hands, and you know, I introduced myself, and he nodded. And I walked into the room, and George Fullerton, Leo Fender, Ed Seavest, who is still a friend, and another guy named John Rodriguez, who was, I don't know where he's at now, but those four gentlemen were in the room. We sat down, and I told them what I did and how long I'd been doing it and for who. And Mr. Fullerton had already, you know, received a recommendation, so they needed a guy in the wood shop to start learning how to route bodies and necks and all that kind of stuff, and mill and glue. So I came in and I started, I think, the next Monday, and I made $4 an hour, and there were no benefits, and I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to take the bus from from East LA to Fullerton. So I was on the bus about 5 hours a day, and I was just thrilled to be there for the whole time I was there, up until the day he died.
Gabriel was asking questions about up north, or anywhere around the Great Lakes. Coming from LA, Gabriel had a good understanding of the wood and lumber industry here in Michigan. He had told us about a meeting scheduled with Brian Mooney. I guess Brian buys wood from old houses and buildings. Brian had taken his family on vacation, and upon returning had talked to Gabriel about some old logs. I was shocked at how much these guys were alike. They both had extreme passion for repurposing wood for a new life. We could tell they had something floating in the air. They didn't talk much about it, but we did know it had to do with very old wood. At the bottom of a lake?
I'm on vacation in Grand Haven, and don't take anything away from Grand Haven. It's a great time. It's nice, but I had a little time for myself. And I'm a history buff, and I'm cruising around the old downtown, and there's this old museum, happened to be free. It's a good thing too. Popped in, and it's got this history of logging, among other things, because Grand Haven and that side of the state also had to do with logging. Big industry, so it's got saws and axes and all those different things and mills. So I'm cruising around, and I'm going to leave, and I see this bulletin board, and there's this kind of ratty ad. None of the tags are taken, and it's the one you see with like the Pinto that you're gonna buy for $500, and you rip it off and you take it home. Yeah, that's what this was. So it says old growth lumber. It didn't even say old growth logs, didn't say sinkers, didn't say anything. It said old growth lumber for sale, Muskegon. Okay, grab the number, hop on the phone, take a look, see Muskegon. I'm about 30 minutes away, 40 minutes away. I got some time on my hands, call the wife, say, hey, I'm gonna take a little day trip. Are you good at the beach? Yeah, we're good. Okay, good. I'm gonna hop up to Muskegon. All right, have fun. See you later. Call the guy on the way. Don't even know if he's gonna pick up.
Yeah, I've got these logs.
Logs, you say?
Yeah, logs. They came out of Lake Muskegon.
What do you mean they came out of Lake Muskegon?
Like out of the ground. We're dredging. We're doing this big dredging project.
Dredging.
Yeah, dredging.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're really cool. They got log marks on it, and I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy named Hackley, but he basically built our town, and he's a big lumber baron, and some of his marks are on it. And anyways, my buddy has got them next door. I don't actually have them.
Okay. Well, I happen to be on this side of the state. Can I come see him?
Well, yeah.
But you're selling them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what's he doing with them?
Well, he's got the contract to dredge it.
All right. And what's he doing with them?
He's got them in a pile in the back.
Okay. My heart's racing. I'm driving, right? Do you understand what you have along the way? I know Hackley from this is the kind of stuff. That's really what I'm trying to get at about this lumber history. And I stopped in the driveway and I said, what's going on with the logs, man? You're burning them. And he goes, that's my buddy. I'm looking at a raw commodity that's untouched, hasn't been seen for 150 years. It's 300 some years old, most likely, and I haven't even touched a history book to understand the layers of what I'm dealing with. I just know in my heart this stuff can't be burned, has to go. I got to do something with it. What am I going to do? I have no clue. It's just got to go. What's all of it? I said, I'll ship it. I'll take it all off your hands. I'll take anything else that's coming. I said, because this stuff looks great. It's got an awesome story. This is what I do. I restore historic buildings. I'm being honest with the guy, and I'm being straightforward with the guy as much as I can. And maybe that is a risk financially for me, but at this point, I'm done. I'm hook, line, sinker, no pun intended. And he says, gives me a price. I said, when can we have it on the truck? Now. He goes, well, I mean, really? 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 I'm like, now. I said, I'm sold. I'm good. Do you need help? No, I got an excavator. I got a gravel hauler. I said, great. call the guy up, find out what he wants. Talk to that guy, we load it up. He comes all, this is the point I tell him I'm in Detroit, It's okay, I'll pay the shipping. I'm in Detroit. They get it here, they drop it. I tried for months now, to get back and get more. And it was like, get back. It's like the fog in Muskegon, man. It just was like mysteriously appeared one day and it's gone. There's nothing else, right?
On May 23, 2018, sunrise was at 6:13 a.m. It was our intention to be in Muskegon and have a camera rolling to catch the sunlight through the trees and the glistening off the water. However, upon arrival, the area where the cut trees would float down the river looked quite different. That morning in particular was a bit foggy, creating an epic view. Beautiful backgrounds and mystical glaze over the waterways leading to Lake Michigan. I think we were trying to capture some sense of the year 1850 with a modern-day camera. We found plenty of historical sites and really got the sense for what logging may have been like. But the real reason for the visit was to actually see where the old wood came from, and the rivers and lakes where it had been submerged for over 150 years. After we left the riverbeds, we went into the city of Muskegon. In the downtown park, we saw the bronze statue of Charles Hackley. We decided to take a ride over to his historical house. Charles Hackley lived between 1837 and 1905. He was known as a lumber baron who applied his fortune during his lifetime to create a city of distinction. Mr. Hackley hired David S. Hopkins of Grand Rapids, Michigan, to design and build these magnificent homes, and a city barn for his family and his partner Charles Hume. Hackley and Hume opened a lumber mill on Muskegon Lake in 1854. After many successful years of mill operation, it closed in 1894 after most of Michigan's Lower Peninsula had effectively been deforested. While many lumber mill owners moved operations to the Pacific Northwest, Hackley remained in Muskegon and focused on urban revitalization of the city of Muskegon. His gifts included a library, hospital, art museum, the first kindergarten, and the first manual training school in the state of Michigan. Now you may have seen A&E's hit show The Curse of Oak Island and its sister show The Curse of Civil War Gold, and that's where Hackley supposedly was tied to some transportation of that gold up to Michigan.
I think the pocket protector was originally invented for him because he had, he was just always writing and drawing and writing and drawing. And while he came up with the idea, and George Fullerton helped him realize that the first electric bass and the first solid body electric guitar, it was George Fullerton and Freddie Tavares that really were behind the design of the Strat and the Jazzmaster and all the other, the jazz bass and all the other, it's like 6 instruments, that are the bedrock of that company. But Leo was behind all the amplifiers. That was actually the first thing that him and Kaufman did, was lap steels and amplifiers. And because of his radio background, he always, they'd go to these swing dances and these hootenannies and whatnot, and and like you could never hear the guitar players. So he had a soft spot in his heart for the guitar players because they were never heard. So then that's when he started tinkering with the ideas of, you know, a solid body guitar, because, you know, there had already been, like, the pickup was already introduced with Charlie Christian and Epiphone and all that. So there was the electric guitar was already, you know, an idea. The lap steel with an electronic pickup was already an idea. Rickenbacker had been doing that. Bigsby had been doing that. So his thing was really just taking something that was already there and refining it to meet the needs of the traveling musician, you know, and so that they could be heard, you know, and that was that. I think that was where his biggest impact was amplification, honestly, you know. To my knowledge, Florence said that he was obsessed with design. He was a farm boy. He grew up on a farm in Fullerton. His family had one of the first farms, so he was up at 5 in the morning, and he actually was a radio repairman in the 40s, early 40s. He had a repair shop. He had a radio repair shop. So he was actually obsessed with electronics as a teenager. Old radios, refrigerators, anything electronic, he would try to fix or break to fix or figure out. He was obsessed with electronics, and his real genius was in mastering the design of the electric guitar amplifier. That was his real passion and motivation, electronic design. Because he wasn't a guitar player. He wasn't a musician. He loved country music. He loved musicians. He loved to get in the minds of musicians, and but he was an electronics guy. He was a total, absolute nerd, all self-taught. I think he went to he had a brief education in electronics, the basics, but he was a complete and utter nerd.
I had a deja vu moment. Made me think of an article I read a long time ago back in school by Stefan Yin. It was concerning the Stradivarius and the reason why those violins became such beautiful instruments and some of the most sought after by violinists. In the violin-making world, two names reign above all others: Antonio Stradivari and Giuseppe Granari. I think that's how you pronounce it. Both masters lived during the 17th and 18th centuries. Since then, luthiers have tirelessly tried to imitate Stradivari and Granari's craftsmanship, copying their wood choice, geometry, and construction methods, but their efforts have been met with little success. A new study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science suggests that the answer may lie in the wood, mineral treatments, followed by centuries of aging. In another article written by Roger Highfield, published in the Telegraph, Stradivari worked with wood that had floated down a river.
So the original pine harvest of Michigan on the west coast, we're talking about Lake Muskegon, which was a major port shooting in and out to Chicago on that side of the state. So tributaries of different rivers ran through that space all the way up into the northern woods. And in the northern woods, you have the workers, the lumberjacks that are out there living off the land and cutting down these massive trees. Now, when I say original harvest, we're talking about trees 300-400 years old when they're cut. So we're talking now 1840s to 1890s prime time, roughly. These guys are out there in the woods. They cut these trees down. They drag them with horse and tackle across to one of the tributaries or one of the rivers that feeds down to the port. They get it onto the sleds, they would call them, and they get a lumber mark on them, and that lumber mark kind of tells the history of that log, who cut it down, where it came from, where it's going, and that's how they get paid. So they'd get those onto the river, and they'd shoot them down in massive quantities down to the port. The port would be Lake Muskegon. Multiple rivers would flow into there. At about that time, you had lumber mills that were scattered throughout Muskegon in that area. One of the big mills was the Hackley Mill, and that mill sat on the banks of the Muskegon. These logs would make their way in throughout those channels and into the mill and into the yard. Now, one of the interesting things about these logs and sort of the composition of these logs is the oxygen content. So how do we get sinker logs? Most logs float. Each log has a content of oxygen when it's cut. Some of them are devoid of that oxygen. And as they hit the water, they begin to get waterlogged, for lack of a better term. Some of these make it halfway down the river, some of them sink right away. In this case, the ones we're talking about, they made it almost all the way there into the harbor. Maybe they sat a little bit too long. They were partially submerged. They made their way down into the muck and into the bottom. That process of having no oxygen, gets you down into that muck and leaves you there. So this becomes a very special wood. It starts this process of leaching out its tannins, changing its color, its composition, its density, its entire sort of makeup of this wood is altered. It's now there for 120, 130, 140, 150 years. Until somebody else comes along and physically yanks that out of the water, reintroducing it to oxygen and the climate, which does certain things to the wood. But that starts this new process of coming in and uncovering what this log is going to look like on the inside and what this log's going to be. This stuff doesn't exist. We don't have old growth forests that are this type of material. So as I mentioned before, when you start to slice into this and you get this flavor of color and grain and tightness, all of a sudden you start to open up a whole nother idea of what this could be. And when we talk about it being made for a guitar, and you talk about the life that a guitar is going to live and the type of people that are going to play it and the sound that it's going to be and the grain that it's going to be and the artistry that's going to come out of it. I mean, this is what's exciting for me for multiple purposes with this wood. It's meant to live an entirely different life. Again, it's not a reclaim process. This is what this was cut down to be. It just sat at the bottom of the lake for 150 years, and now it's going to be a guitar, and it's going to tour the world, and it's going to live in a grimy bar, and it's going to sit in the back of a backseat of a cool old car, and it's going to be held by all these generations of people, the idea of Gabe working with this material, having seen his craft, having seen his artistry, his care of wood, it's like two peas in a pod, right? And I sit here and get so passionate about a log at the bottom of a lake, and he gets that. He understands that. He takes that one step further to say, okay, now we're going to craft this into a beautiful piece of art and a piece of history is born. It's now allowed to tell that story. It's allowed to tell the story that I've told about the history of the log. It's allowed to tell, it's future stories of where it's going to be and where it's going to go. So I can't think of anybody better from a craftsman perspective to take care of that wood and to put it into a form that it deserves to be. You know, it's what it's meant to do.
You know, this thing was made in 1936 for Montgomery Ward's catalog in the Kalamazoo factory here in Michigan. I don't think that there's anything made today that rivals it, honestly. This is a jazz, basically an ensemble instrument. So it was, you know, made to project the quality of the woods on it, the glues, all the joints are still solid, the neck shape, the taper on the headstock, the length of the headstock, the scale of and the accuracy of the scale, the pitch of the neck to the bridge. All the little details and dimensions on this thing I've used in my set neck builds. You know, and the way this headstock is tapered, it's tapered because it has no truss rod, and so it adds to the strength in this part of the neck where it's got the most tension off the strings. But I employed this exact kind of thing in my guitars just because the essence of this thing is so cool, and that detail is so cool just to see that. You know, even if you don't know what the fuck the origins are of it, it's there, and it's like, why did you do that? Well, because it's here, you know, it's like an OG detail, and there's no reason not to do it, you know, really. I couldn't think of a reason not to do it, so I figured, well, it'd be a nice homage to my, you know, one of the inspirations, which is this guitar. I had another one from 1942 that was an Epiphone. I don't have that no more, but it had some of the same details as this. It had a real similar neck. This thing's got just this great V shape to the neck, and you know, so I borrow, like, there's probably 10 details on this guitar that I always kind of turn to, you know, in terms of the visual aspect, the little details, and feel, you know. So this thing has served me well, for sure. When I pick up a guitar like this, in particular this one, I can't tell where the spirit's start and stop, you know, because I don't know how many people, how many players, how many songsmiths, kids, elders, performers have used this instrument to evoke emotion or filter their creativity through. And that's you know, aside from the dirt and the tree, that's where my inspiration comes from, is pieces like this, where there's, you know, 100 ghosts and 1,000 stories locked inside of them. So it's really about the soul of the person, you know, and the fight of the spirit of the person inside needing to get out. That's the essence of what I want to capture in my work, is just to be able to inspire and de-inspired. I mean, art and creativity are humanity's only saving grace. That's it. You know, those are the only things, and love. Those are the only three things that really are our gift to the earth. The rest we're just taking. This was hanging on the wall for like $600, and I was like, okay, put that in the basket. Yeah.
Let me clear my throat. Tell you how it goes. No job, no skills, no money, no bills, and sure as hell no worries. Live my life down at the corner liquor store with my friend Harold underneath a paradise of cardboard. Now I don't give a damn ever since Uncle Spam dropped a bomb on me in Vietnam. I still know who I am, and I still got this shopping cart, a 23-cent in a mason jar. Although my future might look black as tar, I still got this here shopping cart, and she ain't broke down on me yet. Oh, good Lord. Shim sham shoobaloo. The sun shines down on me and my silver stallion, and even with one rickety reel, she still gets around. And I came up on a shiny brand new Mercedes medallion. I picked it up and stuck it on, and we was on our way, just me and my shopping cart, a 23-cent in a mason jar. Although my future might look black as tar, I still got this here shopping cart, and she ain't broke down on me yet. Hey man, wait a minute, where you going with that gasoline can? I was gonna come up on that today. I got 2 kids and a wife back in the car. What am I gonna do? I can't leave her there alone. Maybe me and my shopping car gonna take it on down the street where y'all ain't bothered. 23 cents and a mason jar. Although my future might look black as tar to all of you, I still got this here shopping cart. Lord, no, no. I'm do, shim, sham, shoobaloo. Lord, Hey man, let me get a smoke. Make it just short, alright? You got 25 cents for a cup of coffee? See, I can take my money and take yours, and we can go home and get some. You know what I'm saying? You got is that a stick of juicy fruit? Let me get a little bit. Uh-huh. I could be there. I'm gonna be somebody someday. Yeah, everybody trying to beat me down. Still got it. I still got it. Lord, I ain't got no rent, cause my money's already spent. I'm just hanging down here. She sure look pretty in the sunlight, don't she? I still got this here shopping cart, and it ain't broke down. Oh, Lord, don't sound like my shopping.
tree dies, falls down in the forest, the ground absorbs the minerals and it digests the fibers and bark, the leaves, takes it back into the soil so another tree can then have food to grow out of it. And it's a life cycle. Some of the things that I try to incorporate into my work is the essence of that very cycle. The minerals in the ground have as much to do as the purity of the air that we breathe and the water that feeds it. And that's kind of where all of this begins. It all begins there. Kind of look at what I do as reincarnating, in a sense. Not in the sense that it's a religious or contrived idea, but in the essence that taking something that was really given and just putting myself into it and rearranging it a little bit to suit the needs of an artist to be inspired and make music to inspire again and again and again. And it sounds a little hokey sometimes because I don't really think about putting it into words all that much, but I kind of quietly, as I'm selecting materials to manipulate, I'm thinking of what would, if I was a tree, what would I want to be? You could x-ray this thing and scan it and take all the dimensions and log all the different nuances and details and shit, but if you ain't got the right wood, it ain't gonna sound the same. There's debates and arguments over that idea, but I can tell you for a fact it's gonna breathe different, the notes are gonna decay differently. You know, there's a big kind of rattling debate over like just the bridge and the nut being the most, you know, the thing that determines tone in an instrument the most. So to me, it's about the wood. It's really about, that's why early on I you know, after I got done with my tenure in the shop at G&L and the ensuing other companies that I worked with, and I started playing and recording and getting into the nuances of the tools, the instruments and the amps, and started listening and feeling, I started to realize that all the surface stuff meant nothing. It's all about the core. And that's the thing that I take away from my early years of tinkering and experimenting and failing, you know, and is that, you know, I learned where the lines are, you know, I learned where the boundaries were, and I learned what the boundaries are only there because of our lack of experience at that time in crafting instruments, you know. But I also learned what instruments sounded the best, felt the best, and recorded the best. And those tended to be the things that had old woods. You know, I wanted to be able to compare, and really compare, not attach a pride to it, or an ego, you know, not go, hey, look what I can do, you know, it's great. Because anybody can build anything. It doesn't take a whole lot to muster up the gumption to jump on the internet and figure out how to make something these days. The difference is that what it's made from and how it's made. You know, that's the difference. When I work with an artist, I want to spend time with them. I want to listen to the music, and I want to spend time with them as a human being, discussing cutting the grass, feeding the kids, waking up in the middle of the night, everyday things, because that clues me into the essence of the human that I'm working with. And then we get into all the other stuff, you know, but I need to know certain basic things first, and then we can craft some art together, you know, and then I can tailor that instrument for that human so that they can then feel bonded with it enough to put their emotional spirit into it and trust that it's going to be a vehicle for them to express themselves with. And that's the you know, a few years ago I went through some growing pains, and I was being, you know, tied to the whipping post and told that I was putting, you know, rock star clients ahead of like the simple man and the everyday player and the guy that was really investing in me. And I say to those people, go fuck yourselves, because it's the artist that is the reason that we even aspire to wake up in the fucking morning and do this. You know, it's the Jackson Browne, it's the Jimmy Page, it's the Joe Perry, it's the Josh Homme, that make us turn that dial and put in that CD and deliver us from this godforsaken place. And so without their input, without their inside view, without their secrets being revealed to me, I can't then craft something that's worth a fuck, you know? I mean, me by myself, that's why my name is not on the headstock. I don't mean shit. I'm just another cog in the wheel, you know? But the artist, the prolific artist especially, is the one that should be paid attention to, you know? And then I can craft you an instrument, because then I have a clue into what the best of the best of the best require. And if I can do that for the best of the best of the best, then I can certainly do it for everybody else. And when it comes to serving the general public, or even the rock star, you know, I over the last 30 years of doing this, I know now how to communicate with a human being at the other end of the phone, sitting across from me at a table, at a console in a studio, in my living room, in the backyard, or in England or France or Italy or Germany or wherever I do business abroad, and I can always communicate on that level, and I can gather the details that I need over a 10-minute conversation that will yield the artist on the other end exactly what they need and exactly what they're looking for. And that's not sales 101, that's just how I do it.
Right in front
The day that I got hired, they had me unloading a delivery truck in the back alley that had all the ash and alder for the builds. And I was unloading the truck thinking this is bullshit, but I did it because I knew where I was and I knew who I was working for, and I knew that this would probably change my life, and I wanted it to. I wanted to be Leo. And so I worshipped the ground that plant was built on. And so I gladly did everything I could with as much energy as I could do it with. I cut every body blank to exact sizes that I was given patterns for. I took every note that I could possibly take in regards to the process of production in the wood shop. I studied how the sanders sanded. I studied how the necks were crafted and built. I took notes on how all of the tools were designed, and it was just always a marvel to me that Leo and George designed all these tools to manufacture guitars specifically. You know, we who use these things as spears of destiny know exactly the magic that he possessed. And so I just wanted to tap into that magic, really. So when I left there, after he passed away, I put everything that I could into my back pocket, and I left. But I didn't leave without anything physical. The day that I stopped working for him, I asked the current owners that had just taken over at that point if I could have a moment or two in his lab, and so he gladly let me in, and I spent about 15 minutes alone in his laboratory, just kind of sitting in his chair and holding his pencils and reading his notes, looking at the designs that were on the bench still, and just taking in the essence of the pioneer of the modern solid body electric guitar, and then I had a notion to look around a bit, and I spotted a little rinky-dink little ladder going up to a crawl space in the attic, and I think my curiosity got the best of me, and I went up there to see what was in the attic, and I found a unfinished body that had somehow been assembled and disassembled over time because it had all the original screw holes and some wear and stuff like that, and had been routed and used again, and underneath that body were a set of templates for that body. And so I grabbed those, and I think an old case or something that was up there, and maybe a couple of other like test tremolos and things like that he had, and put them all in the case and came down off the ladder. And as I was exiting his office, I took everything to the owner's son, who was running the place at the time, and I opened the case and said, "Hey, I found these things in the attic. You know, would it be cool if I took them? You know?" And he said, "Yeah, it's just old junk of Leo's. You know, yeah, take it." So I closed the case, and I never looked back. I took off, jumped on the bus, and I knew that I had just received a gift from Leo, and so I put the thing together and played it, started playing it immediately, and I haven't put it down since. That was in 1990. So when I got the idea to start this company, I kind of had a little talk with myself, and I thought that the right thing to do before I made any moves was to take this guitar back to its home and ask the entity that its namesake was from if they'd be interested in using it or reproducing it or anything like that. And I took the guitar and the templates back to G&L and met with the shop foreman and the production manager, and suggested strongly that they take the instrument back and do something with it, because it was a prototype that had never seen the light of day. And I said to them, if you don't, then I'm going to. And they didn't, so I am.
This guitar is, I would say, another great example of Gabriel Curry's excellent craftsmanship. He and his cohorts at Echo Park Guitars. What always has grabbed me about his work is obviously the quality and the attention to detail, but just the respect for the wood and for the art, really. I don't mean to make that sound too heavy, but I just feel like every guitar that he builds is just so respectfully done. Everything about it. The grain, the accoutrements. I mean, look at this guitar, for example, the pickguard and the knobs. And I mean, nobody has ever said that guitar builders are reinventing the wheel, but when you build guitars like this, they just speak for themselves.
I'll tell you that much. It's not just a guitar, put it that way. I've never had a pine. This is amazing. It reminds me of moments of Strat, moments of Telly, moments of Les Paul, all of it in one piece. Wish this was around when I was doing Lose Yourself. I would have used this.
I was lucky enough to play this guitar a few months ago. You know, looking at it, it's unique because the first thing that I noticed as a guitar player who's had hundreds, thousands of guitars in my hands, vintage, new, the pickups don't match, and that's one of the things that makes you instantly go, what's going on here? I mean, we got this single coil in the bridge on this Telly, we got like a Filtron pickup, you know, in the front there, and the first thing I wanted to do was just check out the pickup sound, and then I started playing the guitar, and it was so lively and resonant, it just kept singing. Not knowing how old it was at first when I started playing it, it was resonating through my body. The more that I played it, the more I wanted to play it. It was probably the complete opposite of what I thought I was going to get once I got it in my hands. I really didn't want to give it back. It inspires you to play. This instrument made me want to play more, and it got me curious about all the tonal possibilities that I could get out of it. Stayed in great tune. The neck feels great. It's a guitar that you definitely can feel there's something special going on with it. And there's nothing like good wood, especially good old wood that has been cured and dried out. And there's a reason why those 500-year-old Stradivariuses sound great.
I think when I was a little kid, it was the shape of these things that kind of drew me in. And I can't really, most would say it's the body, you know, it looks like a woman or that kind of thing, but I think I was too young to even know what that was, really. I grew up, you know, obviously in Los Angeles, and the AM radio then was rock and roll radio, and I remember hearing The Doors, Hello, I Love You, and the line, let me jump in your game, always kind of, I could see myself in kindergarten jumping into like the hopscotch games with the girls and on the bars and all that kind of stuff, and it was a very freeing, playful, kind of innocent thing. But at the back of my mind, I knew there was a connotation there. I didn't know quite what it was, but I knew there was some other meaning. But prior to that, I remember hearing Riders on the Storm, and I remember distinctly hearing it and thinking that it said Riders on the Stove. So I thought that it was about the pilot lights on the gas burners, and that they would come to life at night after we went to bed, and they would jump across the stove, you know? And they were like little people. I thought that was what I thought in my head. So I'd wake up in the middle of the night to go catch the Riders on the Stove, you know, because I wanted to see the Riders on the Stove. And my mom caught me one night, and she said, "What are you doing? Like, why are you up?" And you know, because I'm at this edge of the stove, like looking. And I remember her coming in the room going, "What are you doing?" It startled me. I was like, "Shh, I'm trying to catch the Riders on the Stove, Mom." And she was like, "What?" And then I explained it to her, and then she got it. And so that was kind of the beginning of it all. life's not long enough to learn everything that's worth learning. And you can never love long enough either.